Hello, everyone. I'm Eric Taub with the New York Times. I think we know that people are interested in wearables to a certain degree, but I'm wondering, and I think what I'd like to discuss with this panel is how we enlarge that market so that we're not just talking about very dedicated people who are really into physical fitness, but a wider audience. You know, I know that, for example, my wife, who is very active, who's in the gym all the time, who right now is doing an 8-mile hike. I can't get her on the phone. He really wanted a Fitbit, so I got her a Fitbit. And a couple of weeks later, she says, I'm not really so crazy about it, you know. And so I can see in a couple of months, this is going to wind up in one of our drawers along with the old printer cables from 20 years ago. And when I go to an Apple store, I like to look around and see who's looking at what. And when I was at the Apple store in Grand Central the other day, and when I go to the one in LA near my home, I've noticed that there's virtually nobody at the Apple Watch stand. People are all looking at their iPhones, at the iPads, and so on. But the watch, at least anecdotally, hasn't taken off. So I think, you know, what I'd like to explore today is how do we move beyond that? Why is that happening? Does it mean that sensors need to be completely integrated into clothing so that nobody even knows that they're there? Anyone want to jump in here?
Well,
Jocelyn, sure.
Maybe start right here. Yeah. I think we need to realize that what is our level of development here in this industry? And I think we're in the infancy, and we'll see development of new technologies. We'll see development of new wearables as time goes by. There's an enormous amount of people, of capital that is being spent right now precisely for development of these wearables. The other thing also is that, so therefore you're on that curve. The other thing is we can see that there is more and more of these wearables being sold every year. I mean, the curve is pretty steep. But you're right. How do we kind of go to the next step here? And I think what we'll see is exactly that. I mean, wearables and sensors needs to be almost an unconscious wear. I think that is something that we're not going to avoid. I think there's going to be a lot of I and many other people. I mean, the only way thinks that a lot of this is going to be introduced inside clothing and so on and so forth. But what we have to do as we're asking the question is, where are we in that curve? And is that wearable curve still growing? And I think we are in the infancy of this technology. I think there's a lot of organization that are working, and I think we'll see. We're right now I believe, at the dawn of an explosion of invention and innovation, precisely because we have so many smart people, so much capital globally being spent just for that, and there's a demand. Consumers are increasingly more sophisticated. They're now catching up with, oh, I want that information. Maybe the sensor I'm wearing is not exactly how I want it, but I want that information. I want to know if I'm active. I want to know if my heart rate is so and so. I want to know these things. So there is a fundamental demand from the consumer to get that information. So in my view, we'll see the category is going to continue to expand, and we're right at the cusp of an acceleration in innovation, I think.
Yeah, sure.
I'm totally in line with this, that the category is going to expand, but my feeling is that so far most of the products have just emerged because technology enables building them, and the actual reason why how does it make my life better is still kind of...
So we're almost doing it because we can do it, you're
yes.
saying?
Of course, there are some good applications and specific use cases where they really deliver a lot of value. But like this case with your wife, that after a couple of weeks the interest is gone, and that's because the sustainable benefit is still quite.
So what do you
there.
find in your company? You've got a line of smartwatches. They're some of them are fairly expensive,
Right.
And what are you finding in terms of customer acceptance of their design and so on? And how have you modified that based on feedback?
We've been focusing heavily on design. So our philosophy is to combine the sports benefits and the everyday use and outdoor durability with great design, so that people can really use them not only in specific purposes in their sports, but also as their daily watch, and that seems to work pretty well for us.
And Peter, you're introducing an interesting new product. The one really seems to look for a wide audience, specifically, I believe, amongst females. Is that right?
And
Why don't you talk about that?
It comes something to this. The important thing here is to find the utility. Is that the technology is there, and we always see as technological enablers emerge, they will be used for their own sake. But I think the fascinating thing about our industry right now is that there are many possibilities, and we can see sensors being integrated into clothing, into footwear, into wearables. It's all there. What happens right now, I think, is like teasing out of that the utility. I think if you think about utility think about Facebook as having a utility. So I don't mean just something very dry, but actually finding that genuine user need. So with our products, the Monitor Track, it creates a weight loss program that's delivered through a smartphone or a tablet. And that's a rich media weight loss program. You set how much weight you want to lose all the time, and it creates an exercise program for you. But then it's using wearable technology to take your movements and your heart rate and adjust that. So each individual that's using it will be having a unique experience based on their own body and their own response to the program.
And this is geared specifically to women?
It's initially for women, and we'll be introducing a unisex band very soon. It can be worn by.
So I know that on your website you speak about you can either wear it on your wrist or on a sports bra.
That's right.
Do you get better results one versus another? Is it just the convenience?
During exercise, during our exercise programs, you'll wear the chest clip, which takes it has electrodes on it, so it takes a direct reading on the heart rate. So it gives you very accurate heart rate. And so that's the best way that we can pull that type of information into the system. And then for the rest of the time, you wear the device on your wrist, and it's taking into account all of the activity that you're doing when you're moving around, as well as monitoring your sleep. And then we also have worked out a nice way of maintaining power, because I think one of the big inhibitors here in wearables is keeping things charged up, particularly when we start to talk about clothes. We'll be thinking about, do I have to plug my T-shirt in tonight because I want to wear it tomorrow? So what we've been able to do is the chest clip that you wear the device in for a small amount of time actually charges up the track itself, so that when it's on my wrist, I don't need to plug it in overnight, tracking my sleep. I can so you have this 24/7 power management. But I do think the power is an interesting area for where we are. And of course, the user acceptance of charging things is changing all of the time anyway. It wasn't so long ago where the idea of charging a book would have been very strange, or charging a watch, or charging a cigarette, something today that people who smoke have kind of will do that. So these things are changing, but they are inhibitors to it.
By the way, so you mentioned that you can wear it on a sports bra. Have you also thought about the next step, perhaps partnering with a sports bra manufacturer to integrate the product into it?
I think there are many opportunities along those lines to begin to deploy the technology into various parts of clothing and pull it back into the system.
Because obviously I think the transparency of the product is really going to be paramount, or certainly very important as we go forward. And I just read the other day that Backtrack, the company that makes blood alcohol monitoring systems, now has a smartwatch band that you wear as part of your Apple Watch, and it monitors your blood alcohol content just by secretions from your skin, which I thought was a terrific utility instead of having to blow into a tube all the time, which would probably put a lot of people off.
I definitely would agree with the fact that the charging is still one of the biggest issues, right? I've tried various activity trackers myself, and I think I've not necessarily lost interest in the data, but just after a few charging cycles, you run out of battery, you forget your charger when you're traveling. I think that's the biggest issue. As the better the batteries get, the better or the more the devices can be used without having to be recharged, I think the better it's going to be. And I mean, right now I use a GPS watch that I use for running and that I wear every day. That's the only reason I have the activity tracker on my wrist all day as well, because I want to make sure it is charged, right? But it's still, for me, it's the biggest challenge is having a device that is running out of battery, and especially with proprietary chargers. And me traveling and having a cable here and a charger there makes it all very complicated.
It's in terms of how much data we're gathering. You know, I think we know that eventually we'll be able to gather constant data, and I've heard people speak about how we'll be able to monitor every bodily function, and so that we'll know at all times what some event might be ready to occur. But I also wonder if, you know, if too much data will be accumulated. I've often been on the receiving end of a lot of companies that want me to help them promote baby monitoring, for example, where you can monitor your infant's temperature at every moment of the evening. And I think some of that kind of stuff can drive a parent crazy, actually. So how do we, you know, determine how much is too much and what becomes actionable? I'm sure these.
Well, you adapt to the technology, I guess. I mean, the same question is could have been asked, you know, a few years back when heart rate sensors became pretty much the norm in wearable. So, you know, I woke up this morning and I saw that my resting heart rate ticked up, and I wasn't particularly happy about it. It was probably because of the last night's excesses. But so the point is that you kind of adapt to the technology, and I think back to kind of where we are as a category, what we've been doing. And you know, back to your first question, what we've been doing is we've been collecting a lot of data. The phase that we're getting into is that we're now making sense of it. And this is where, and was I was commenting a little bit as being kind of at the cusp of a bloom of innovation, is that now that data has been collected from a huge sample, millions and millions of people, millions and trillions of times. Now that we've been collecting this, and we're doing it more and more efficiently. And again, I say we, and I mean the entire industry. Now what we do is we're making sense of it, and now we can keep the interest to the user to use and manage that data on a much longer time period. As you said a little bit earlier, predicting some events. Think about heart. This for me is when the floodgates are going to go open, fly right open, because we're making sense of it. Now it makes sense. Now it has a me dimension to it.
Yeah. Peter, you mentioned to me the other day when we were chatting on the phone about how you had an experience. I think you were walking in a city in Europe in which you don't live, and you got some readings on one of your devices. And why don't you talk about that? Because it helped you figure out what you needed to do that you weren't. With regard to walking, I think you weren't walking enough.
I used to do a lot of business travel when I worked for Nokia, and I would always find I'd get very tired.
Yeah.
And when I got my first wearable, the Nike Fuel Band, it was then that I discovered that actually my graph of activity went right down during a business trip. I thought I was tired because I was rushing around and getting to the airport. Actually, I was tired because I was sitting down too much and wasn't really doing anything. So I think the interesting thing is when you start to put numbers on things, then there is some utility there. Then you can recognize a pattern, and then you can make adjustments to your lifestyle. Right. So I got into the habit of of landing in a new city, checking in at the hotel, and then even if it's the middle of the night and really cold, going out and walking and getting my steps up. And
But in that case, you figured out what you should be doing. But now with your new product, are you not telling the users what they need to do to actually lose weight?
Yeah, we're creating a pretty rich program that works with you and takes you through this whole thing. I mean, one of the key things of weight loss or weight maintenance is engagement. The technology, it's good. As a friend and colleague of mine said the other day, that you can buy a set of scales to weigh yourself, but that won't help you lose weight. So the key thing is the engagement, and we're building an experience that is very, very engaging and is with you. It works with people who have very busy lives, and it creates a program that doesn't need any specialist equipment. You don't need a gym. You can do all the exercise at home, and so it can fit in. So I think those are some of the things that can help people to really meet their goals.
But will people be able to say, like, if you suggest do this, can a user say, well, I don't like to do that, I want to do something else?
Actually, yeah, and with our program, you can skip the exercise comes up in your calendar, and you can say, you know what, I'm really not going to do it, and your program will adjust. Okay, you miss it, you keep missing it, then you get to a point where you may need to rethink about the time scale that you're aiming for here. But I think that's the interesting part, is everyone is an individual, and we'll work through this differently, and we need to be able to take a program and adjust it to each individual.
Yeah, Michael, you've got an interesting company. I know your products are not sold in this country, but you provide products to monitor pets' health. And so I think in terms of integrating sensors, it's probably not a big deal because they already wear collars.
That's absolutely right. So we do essentially GPS tracking devices and activity tracking devices, or combined product of GPS pet tracking for dogs, cats, and activity tracking. So for us, and what we get from the users too, is we do show them a bunch of graphs, and that this is how much your pet moved and over time and all this kind of stuff. But what we get, the feedback we get from customers is, don't show me the data, tell me what I have to do. How is my dog, how is my beagle compared to other beagles with that weight range? Or how much activity should I do with my dog? Do I walk my dog too much? Do I walk my dog too little? Remind me when I should walk my dog. Those are the things that people want to get, the information by using the data behind the scenes, but they don't necessarily want to be directly confronted with the data, with the numbers, at least in the space where we see it. What we see is customers saying, tell me when I need to go to the veterinarian. Tell me when my dog is less active than normal because something might be wrong, and I might not necessarily get it from the dog right away, right? Especially with dogs, they can tell you when, good dog owners obviously feel when something's wrong with their dog, but they can't necessarily tell you what's going on. But if you're at work, your dog is at home or something like that, and you get there and you see, okay, my dog has only walked 50% of the average day, that means something's up, right? And I should see what I can do.
So does your data, is it customized for each breed? Because I know some dogs need more activity than others.
What we try to do is we don't necessarily want to say for this specific breed you should do this much. What we try to do is, first of all, we gather a lot of data from different breeds. There are a lot of mixed breeds, which makes it even more complicated, right? Mixed breeds, different sizes, weight ranges. But we learn from our data what other people with a similar pet in terms of age and weight and all this does, and how it compares to how it compares to that pet, to other pets, essentially.
Okay. Do you get any pushback from potential customers saying, look, I've had a pet forever and I've never needed this kind of thing, and I've always figured out if the dog needs more exercise or not?
There's some people, right? I mean, it's like in other spaces where some people say, you know what, I don't need a wristband to know how I lose weight or keep my weight or how much sports I need to do. Or there are a lot of people that go running and say, I don't need a GPS watch or whatever, right? I think it's the same with pets. There are certain people that want the technology and certain people that say, hey, I wanna be tech free, but I don't think there's necessarily a big difference to the human space.
You know, I'm reminded of an old Beatles movie where it was called Help, and the two bad guys, one guy says to the other, keep me informed of your every move, and the guy says, yes, boss, and then he signals him on his radio, I'm now moving my right foot, I'm now moving my left foot. And you know that you can get down to such granular information that at some point it can become useless as well.
Yeah.
So, sorry, just going to take a look at my notes. How do we, with all these different devices giving us different data, how do we prevent the customer from being overwhelmed with sort of like device overload and being able to get their information in some central hub? And who's going to create that hub? Where's it going to come from? And how do we, or are we going to have multiple hubs as we see today? Is that, what do all of you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one. It could go in a number of different ways. I think it is early days, as we were saying at the beginning. I think the industry is relatively new. Now, what we see at the moment, I think, is very much experiences based around the central hub of a smartphone. But it's not inevitable that that's how things will evolve. I think that one of the key enablers for the Internet of Things is mesh networking. So simply, my home, I have an internet hub, and all of my devices are connected in a kind of spider pattern from that. But with a mesh network, information is passed device to device and can travel along whichever is the most efficient route through that. Now, I wonder when we talk about the Internet of Things for the body, whether we may get to a point where we have a personal mesh network of our own, of many different devices, all working for me to keep track of this useful information for myself, in which case the most useful device will measure and deliver information. I think that voice, you could imagine something like Cortana, Siri, speaking to me about directions or the way that I'm running. And so it's not necessarily that I think everything will be delivered through a screen. We're just very used today about the screen being the place where we go for most of our digital experiences. I think we might see, over the coming years, we may see that evolving a little bit.
And then also the data that is collected from all these devices that people might have, like multiple worn when they go out and do stuff. So that I think APIs and that kind of connectivity between services and between different companies' products is also an important thing. And it's hard to imagine that one company could collect all data from all different devices and products that people are having. So that's how the benefits are collected from different places, and then probably there's a need for some kind of integration then to give a live dashboard of all my different things that I own, and all of us are living different lives, so we want to monitor it in different ways. So that is a challenge that we need to solve also as an industry.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think there's kind of two sides to the question here. Is that the first one is how the network is going to evolve. The real answer to that question is we don't know. We have hunches, but we don't know. I think your view of how it's going to evolve is pretty likely. On the other hand, how not to overwhelm the user with data is actually doing the work that the industry is doing now, is actually making sense of that data and providing the amount of detail that the user requires. If we've talked a little bit earlier about Olympic athletes and professional athletes. They need a set of data which are very, very different than what I would require. And even better, the data that I require is actually slightly different in the winter when my activity level goes down than in the summer when I'm really looking at, I want to go faster and I want to run longer. And so even for some individuals, you have ebbs and flow on request or need for that data or detail of that data. And I think we'll see companies like us, like TomTom and the others, applying user interface science that we've gleaned through our experiences to just be able to provide the user the data that they need at the moment that they need it. That's also a very large topic of to keep it sustainable for the user. as I don't want to be overwhelmed. I don't want to have, because it's too much and I can't deal with it. I don't want too little because I want some feedback, so I can stay interested in what I'm doing.
Right.
So that's actually a very important topic, because it's that interface between us as organization and the user as a user of that data, as a consumer of that data.
And your company, of course, I think would be best known by many people as a manufacturer of GPS devices for cars. Given your long history of working with car manufacturers, are you also looking at integrating your health and fitness data into vehicles?
Well, I think, again, it goes back to this kind of a network, the spider, which the car becomes one leg of that spider, and how the data goes around. I think what we'll see is complete integration, and we're already seeing this between fitness, health, and all of the data and sensor that we collect from the body, home automation, and obviously vehicle automation, and that performing your own personal expanded network of data. So I think there is going to be a consolidation of your own network.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Peter, I could imagine with your product, eventually you might be able to help people figure out what food to buy when they're on the way to the grocery store.
Yeah, I think that there are many possibilities there, and I think it is very much down to taking the massive data and finding what's relevant to somebody at a particular time. The exciting enablers for that are that we have GPS, whether you're using that with a pet or we're using it as people, so that we can have location-specific information. So our ability to generate lots and lots of data, of course, is creating huge amounts of data, but also our ability to then find the moments when that's relevant to you. At the moment, our device will give a lot of nutrition advice, but you can see how that could develop into you're passing a particular store where that's relevant to your nutrition, habits, and you may want to go in and buy those things. So I think that applying, in a way, we think of the weight loss program that we have created now as a little bit like, in the olden days, it would have been a very thick book, and it would have been full of information about nutrition and exercise to help you to get to a particular weight goal. And that book would have been very thick because it would have contained information that was relevant for everyone who might have read it. And it would have been, some of that information would be relevant to you as an individual, and some of it would be relevant to you today, and some next week, and some the week after, and you would have to work quite hard to find it. And what we're able to do with technology that we have today is simply to only deliver the parts that's relevant to the individual, and then only when it's relevant. And you can see how that could go much, much further.
Right. We just have a few minutes, and I'd like to open it up to the floor for any questions.
We have a microphone. If you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand. No questions?
No.
Hi, so I'm curious what anybody on the panel actually would have to say about moving past a point where you're presenting data and where you're presenting insight. I actually am a scientist, and I can't handle all the data my sensors are providing me. And so you mentioned, for example, that your heart rate ticked up this morning. Was that a significant change in your data? Was it just happened to be a variation that you then would key into? And is that raising anxiety by having data but no insight?
Yeah, I mean, generating insight, well, yeah, so it was I know if I drink a lot, my resting heart rate will go up. And I know the first day in Vegas, that's what happens. Secret cell. But that's the crux right now, is that how do we generate that insight? And again, we've all been collecting trillions and trillions and trillions of points of data. Now we need to make sense of it, and we need to redistribute it.
Right.
10,000 steps was okay because it gave me kind of a relative view of what I've done today and compared to tomorrow and yesterday. But what does it really do? Now we're in that phase where we have collected enough, again, heart temperature, GPS position, and so on and so forth. Can we put all of this together and let the individual know whether they are training enough, not enough, they're getting better, they're maintaining their health. And one of the things, again, that we haven't talked about, and we probably won't have time to, is managing stress, mindfulness. So we spend a lot of time on the physiological bits, things we can measure and count. But we'll see also, I believe, tremendous amount of innovation on how do we deal with stress, how do we deal with happiness in general, and that's, I said, we're in the infancy of our industry a bit earlier. We're before the infancy of that thing, and there's tremendous amount of opportunities there, I think.
That's a fabulous way to end, Eric, and panelists. Thank you so much. And actually, Jocelyn, we're calling that feelables, and we're looking for it in 2018. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.